By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Welcome to another Timmy's Top 10. In today's Timmy's Top 10, we are looking at top 10 1/1 creatures in old school Magic the Gathering. And we are going to start by looking at the honorable mentions, and I'm just going to quickly go through them from left to right. And on the first card here on the left is the Asp from the Arabian Nights expansion. 1 green, 1/1. If Asp inflicts any damage on your opponent must spend 1 before the draw phase of his or her next turn or lose an additional 1 life. Now, if you can get the Asp out early, if you're playing an aggressive tactic, this card can be extremely useful and a big pain for your opponent. You'll be surprised how often you can actually deal 2 damage with the Asp if you can get it out early. Another card here on the list, right next to the Asp from the same expansion, Arabian Nights, is the Aladdin. Now, Aladdin to cast is 2 red and 2, of course, for a 1/1 creature. And then let's take a look at what it can do. For 2 red and 1, you need to tap it, and then you can take control of an artifact from your opponent. Artifact is returned when Aladdin is removed from play or when the game ends. Interesting here is, so you can tap it, steal an artifact, next turn untap it, you keep the artifact and steal another artifact. So, I mean, this card should be bonkers in a format like old school Magic because everybody is playing with artifacts. In all honesty, I think this card is a little bit underplayed. And how cool would it be to play this in an ATOG brew? So I don't know if there are any ATOG deck players listening. Try out Aladdin. I mean, really cool. Okay, continue. Card right next to Aladdin, we find Witch Hunter. Witch Hunter is 2 white and 2 from the Dark expansion. And this card is so interesting because it's a white card, but it feels so blue. Look at what it does. Tap, Witch Hunter does 1 damage to target player. Pay 2 white and 1 in tap. Return target creature opponent controls from play to owner's hand. Enchantments on the creature are destroyed. Now this card just reminds me of the perfect weapon against those annoying paralyzes. But also a great weapon, even better against control magic. Playing against a blue mage? Board in your Witch Hunter. And those control magics are a thing of the past. Okay, then the other card, again a card from the Arabian Nights. It's well represented in this honorable mentions list. For 1 black and 2, we find Gabal Ghul. Gabal Ghul is such an interesting card. 1/1, it's one of those cards that you want to brew with. It reads, at the end of each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Gabal Ghul for each other creature that died during the turn and was not regenerated. So basically what you can do here is play a sweeper like a Wrath of God or a Pestilence, and after that all the creatures have died, then you put Gabal Ghul on the battlefield, and at the end of your turn it gets +1/+1 counters for every creature that died. So this is really a card that you can brew around. And let's take a look at the bottom row. On the left side we find King Suleiman, and this is really a sideboard card. It's really a sideboard card. 1 white and 1. It's a 1/1 creature, of course, like all the creatures on this list. Again from the Arabian Nights, it reads, tap to destroy an Ifrit or a Jinn. Now, some of the most powerful creatures and most used creatures in old school Magic or Ifrits and Jinns. Serendip Ifrit, Juzum Jinn. What about Juzum Jinn? Urnum Jinn. I mean, you see them so often, and King Suleiman can do that job for you. So, again, one of those cards that maybe should be used more in the sideboard. Obviously, I think that all the Arabian Night cards are dealing with a problem that they have to deal with is City in a Bottle. And City in a Bottle really has an impact, I feel, on how often these cards are played. Maybe too big of an impact. Right next to the Suleiman, we find Citadel Druid. Hey, a card from another expansion here. 1 green and 1 is from the Antiquities, and it reads, Druid gains a +1/+1 counter each time your opponent casts an artifact. So this can be extremely powerful, or can get extremely big, I should say, very quickly, especially when playing against an artifact deck. The obvious drawbacks here is that a Mox is only 0 to cast, and usually, especially when you're on the draw, by the time you get your Citadel Druid out, a lot of those Moxen and Mana Rocks are already in the game. But despite that fact, this card could be an interesting addition to your green sideboard. Then right next to it, we find a card from the Dark, and this is Elves of Deep Shadow. For 1 green. It's a 1/1. You can tap it to add black to your mana pool, and Elves of Deep Shadow deals 1 damage to you. I mean, I think a big reason why this card is on my honorable mention list is because of the art. I think this is one of the most beautiful pieces of artwork that Jesper Meerforce gave the game Magic the Gathering. I have a play set of these. I always want to play with these, in all honesty, usually I have to pick a Birds of Paradise over this because it can make any color mana, or I have to pick a Llanowar Elf simply because it doesn't damage me. A problem is in old school Magic, and I mean, let me know if you agree with this or not, but the thing is, we're using City of Brass very often in all sorts of decks. I mean, I love that card, but it deals 1 damage to you. If you then, on addition, also have an Elves of Deep Shadow dealing 1 damage to you, you're already looking at 2 damage a turn just to get your mana going. And I was recently playing with this deck against an Underworld Dreams deck, and oh man, it really killed me. But nonetheless, it's on this list. I think it's a really good 1/1. The card right next to it, I mean, that is such an interesting card. Hell's Caretaker, 1 black and 3. Summon Hell's Caretaker. How cool is that? From Legends, it reads, tap, and during your upkeep, sacrifice a creature and take a creature from your graveyard and put it directly into play. Treat this creature as though it were just summoned. So when I read cards like this, I am thinking about Reanimator decks. I'm thinking about all sorts of weird structures where you put Lord of the Pits in your graveyard and you make crazy trades. And I mean, this is really a card that makes me want to brew. It's a beautiful, beautiful card. Let me know, by the way, if you have a Hell's Caretaker deck, because I have a few Hell's Caretakers and I would love to brew one. So these are my honorable mentions, and now let's continue to the top 10. And on number 10, we are finding a classical creature, Kird Ape. For 1 red, it's a 1/1, and of course a Taiga right next to the Kird Ape, because Kird Ape wants to be in a jungle. And this is just a beautiful card. 1 red, it can make itself 2/3 if there is a forest. The combination, the ancient combination, of course, is Taiga into Kird Ape. And I think this creature lost a lot of its play and game in old school Magic the Gathering because of 2 factors. First of all, the Mishra's Factory. It can pump itself into a 3/3 and kill the Kird Ape, so that makes Kird Ape much less effective. Another reason is that, hey, it is an Arabian Nights card, and we talked about that before. Arabian Nights is under a lot of pressure because of the City in a Bottle. So still, it made it to the top 10 at number 10. So let's go to number 9. On number 9, we are finding Sindbad, and Sindbad is 1 blue and 1 a summoned Sindbad creature. Tap to draw a card for your library, but discard that card if it is not a land. Now, you can do so many cool things with this card, but just the fact that you can draw a card, I mean, something is happening. You can look at it from both ways. If it's not a land card, at least you're putting something in your graveyard, and maybe that is useful if you're playing with, for example, Animate Dead or any other card that lets you take cards out of your graveyard. And hey, if it's a land card, then hey, you just got an extra card for free. Obviously, this card is even better when you combine it with other cards. For example, Sylvan Library, it lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Then you know exactly where you can find the lands and when to activate Sindbad, and whether or not it is useful and wise to activate Sindbad. You can even use Sindbad to go through your useless cards quicker, where you say, okay, all of these 3 cards are not great. I'm just going to pick one, and I know the 2 on the top I don't really need at this point. Then you can use Sindbad to kind of filter through your deck and dump them in your graveyard, so that that key card that you need will come to the surface sooner than later. So that is Sindbad on number 9. Then we're going to number 8. On number 8, we are finding a personal favorite of mine, Argivian Archaeologist, also nicknamed The Shirt, because it's kind of like he's not wearing pants. I mean, he's wearing this khaki type of pants, but I mean, it looks like he's shirtless, right? So for 2 white and 1, this creature from the Antiquities does something very special, because you can pay 2 white and tap to bring any artifact from your graveyard to your hand. And obviously a dream combo is Argivian Archaeologist with Chaos Orb. Keep flipping, keep flipping. So we find the Archaeologist here on number 8. Let's go to number 7. And on number 7, we're finding a Whirling Dervish. Now, this card has proven itself to be a golden sideboard card for a lot of decks. 2 green, and you've got a 1/1 creature, a Summoned Dervish with protection from black. And that protection from black is obviously very important, and one of the reasons that it can be such a good sideboard card. If you're a green mage and you're facing one of those aggressive black decks, the Whirling Dervish can really, really save you. And the good thing is it gains +1/+1. at the end of each turn in which it does damage to an opponent. Now, important here to note is that once you put your counter on your Whirling Dervish, officially you are saying to your opponent, I'm passing turn. So, I mean, usually in old school Magic we're quite relaxed, and I've never seen anybody saying, hey man, you said you passed a turn. But technically, when you've put your counter on there, it's the end of the turn. Now, I've put a Pestilence next to this creature because obviously Whirling Dervish has protection from black. So it's a pretty nice combo if you can get these two cards on the table, kill everything in the field except for Whirling Dervish because it has protection from black, then attack your opponent to get that +1/+1 counter. Okay, let's continue with this list on number 6. And on number 6, we are finding Royal Assassin. Now, this is, of course, a classic combination. Royal Assassin, 2 black and 1, a Summon Assassin. Tap to destroy any tapped creature. So this beautiful 1/1, of course, works fantastic with an IC Manipulator. Tap the creatures down of your opponent and kill them with the Royal. And the nice thing is, if you don't have an IC to combine it with, even just having your Royal Assassin on the board, it works like a wall. It kind of numbs your opponent until they have something to deal with the Royal Assassin. So it's like everybody is taking a step back once you've played your Royal Assassin, you know, once it's on the board. And now we are ready to start with the top 5 on this list. And on number 5, we are finding Preacher from the expansion The Dark. For 2 white and 1, Preacher is a 1/1 summon Preacher, and I just would like to point out the art on this card. It's just incredibly stunning. I would play this card just for the art alone, but let's now take a look at what the card actually does. Tap and you gain control of one of opponent's creatures. Opponent chooses which target creature you gain control of. If Preacher becomes untapped, you lose control of this creature. You may choose not to untap Preacher as normal during your untap phase. You also lose control of the creature if Preacher leaves play or at the end of game. Now again, Preacher really one of those white cards, just like Witch Hunter, by the way, that reminds me of a Blue Mage. How cool would it be to have this weird kind of deck where you combine 4 Witch Hunters and 4 Preachers? I'm just kind of thinking now, because your opponent gets to choose what they want to give you, but maybe if you send everything back that you don't want with your Witch Hunter and then you tap your Preacher, that would be pretty cool. Anyway, the card that I've chosen to combine it with for this list is Diamond Valley. I've seen players doing this and it's really cool. They use Preacher at the end, at their end step, or whenever actually, during the turn of the opponent, to steal one of the creatures and then sack it with Diamond Valley, and then they destroy your creature and they gain life from your creature. And you know what the worst thing of this whole combo is? They can do it again next turn. They can do it again. So it's really, it's actually tons of fun if you're the one playing it. Unfortunately, I don't own a Diamond Valley, one of those cards that's still on my list, but if you own one and if you have a Preacher, this is definitely a really fun and recommended combo for you to play with. So this is it on number 5, Preacher. Let's go to number 4. And on number 4, we are finding Flying Man. And Flying Man is 1 blue. It's just a 1/1 flyer for 1. And I could have put the script sprites here as well, or just a 1/1 creature. A flying 1/1 creature for 1 is just very powerful in old school Magic. The reason I've chosen Flying Man is because it just works so well in an aggro blue brew, and I've seen it being played quite successfully in many decks. Unstable Mutation is a nice card to combine with it, but it's also a dangerous card. The obvious idea here is to give yourself a 4/4 flyer turn 2 that can attack and deal 4 damage to your opponent. Now it's also dangerous for obvious reasons. First of all, both of these cards are Arabian Nights, so again, here is that card again, City in a Bottle. It's dangerous when you're playing with these cards, when you're so Arabian Nights committed. And it's also dangerous because when you're playing your Unstable Mutation, your opponent can respond by, for example, casting a Lightning Bolt on your Flying Man. That means you're losing both creatures. Another way how this could kind of backfire on you is, of course, if they simply remove Flying Man as soon as the Unstable Mutation is on there. So in a way, you're setting yourself up for 2-for-1. What I personally like to do as well is actually not playing Unstable on it, but just keep poking my opponent, being that annoying player, like, okay, attack you for 1 with Flying Man, attack you for 1 with Flying Man, and you can see your opponent is thinking, oh, I should have killed this creature the moment it hit the board, but I didn't, and now I feel like I don't want to do it anymore because I've taken damage. So you're giving your opponent a difficult choice. And I think that's something that Flying Man is really good at, giving your opponent a difficult choice of, should I invest removal into a 1/1 flyer? I really do not want to, but then again, it's dealing so much, but it's dealing damage every single turn. Okay, so that's it for the first 6 cards on this list. We are now going to start with the top 3. And on number 3, we are finding a classic. We are finding the mighty, the green Llanowar Elves. So of course, this is really a staple in old school Magic the Gathering. The Llanowar Elves, 1 green, 1/1, tap to add 1 green mana to your mana pool. This tap can be played as an interrupt. Beautiful card, has been popular from the get-go. It's just ramp in its purest form. Of course, you have Birds of Paradise to consider as well whenever you have to choose between a Llanowar Elves or a Birds of Paradise. Interesting to note here, because it's a 1/1, you can also use your Pendelhaven on Llanowar Elves to put some extra pressure on the board. Obviously, Birds of Paradise can create any type of mana, so it really depends strongly on what kind of deck you played. I'm showing it here now with Armageddon, because in Armageddon, the Llanowar Elves can play a very decisive role. It can get Armageddon out 1 turn early, and you know what? When Armageddon destroys all the lands, your Llanowar Elf stays on the battlefield. Oh yeah, so it can really give you that advantage. So this is on number 3. Let's go to number 2. And on number 2, we are finding Protocol Sorcerer. Yes, the Timmy baby. Maybe you expected this creature to be on number 1 on my list, and believe me, I really wanted to. And you know what? Maybe number 2 is a little bit high, but hey, it's my list. I'm gonna put it on 2. Yeah. So what it does, well, we all know what it does, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. For 1 blue and 2, it's a summon wizard. You can tap it to do 1 damage to any target, so to a creature or to a player. So it's better than a witch because it can go do 1 damage to any target. And the card that I've combined it with here in this example is Living Plane. Living Plane, beautiful art, really, I love it. What this card does, it's an enchant world. Treat all land in play as both lands and 1/1 creatures. Now obviously, the combo is pretty obvious here. You can use your Protocol Sorcerer to start destroying the lands of your opponent. I mean, that's just incredibly cool. Another way, what I really like as well, is Protocol Sorcerer and Desert, Protocol Sorcerer and Instant Energy, Protocol Sorcerer and Fungasaur. There are actually a lot of different little kind of synergies and combos you can make with the Timmy, and maybe that is why I've put it here on number 2, because it's a very versatile card, at least in my book it is. Now let's go to number 1. On number 1, are you ready? Because I think you are going to be surprised to see this on number 1. We find Triskelion on number 1, an artifact creature from the Antiquities with a casting cost of 6. What? 6 mana for a 1/1 creature? How could that ever be good? Well, let me tell you, when Triskelion comes into play, it gets 3 +1/+1 counters when cast. Controller may discard a +1/+1 counter at any time to do 1 damage to any target. Now, I've played with Triskelion plenty of times to know that this card is just bonkers in old school Magic. Why? Because it usually represents a 2-for-1. There are always some small creatures that you can just instantly wipe out when you play this card. If your opponent wants to destroy this card, it's even a hassle because it still deals 3 damage to the opponent. Hey, you play a disenchant on it? Fine. I'm just going to take 3 counters off and kill some of your stuff and deal some damage to you. And oh yeah, I also lose a creature in the process. You know, and another great thing, what you see a lot of mages do in a deck called Robots, is when people play Swords to Plowshares on Triskelion, it gets removed from the game. But you know what? Triskelion has a unique ability that it can kill itself. So it kills itself, ends up in the graveyard. And when it's in the graveyard, you can use, hey, Archaeologist, you can use Animate Dead, even better. This card also is perfect with cards like Copy Artifact. But it's really a lot of fun when you have a Thanasis Coffin out. Because what you can do is you can tap the Coffin, put Triskelion in, then during your upkeep, during your untap step, choose to untap the Coffin, and then you're releasing the Triskelion. And the Triskelion comes out with additional +1/+1 counters because it keeps the counters that it had when you put it in the Coffin, and then the counters are doubled when it comes out of the Coffin. Now, important to note here is that your Triskelion does come into play tapped. But also an important thing to note here is that that doesn't matter for removing the +1/+1 counters. You can still do that. It doesn't matter whether the Triskelion is tapped or untapped. So to make a long story short, you can put your Triskelion in the coffin, and then the next turn when you untap your coffin, it comes into play with 6 counters. Yeah, if it went into the coffin with 3 counters, because every time it comes into the game, it gets 3 new +1/+1 counters. So in theory, you could actually get 21 counters on Triskelion. I mean, that would take you 6 turns, since when you play it, it already has 3 counters on it. But, you know, it would be pretty cool. Then you've got 21 ping damage on your Triskelion, and you can just kill your opponent in one go with this huge Triskelion robot and all these arms shooting at your opposing mage. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. That would be really nice. I like that idea. Okay, this was my Timmy's top 10. If you like these top 10s, leave a comment. Let me know what kind of top 10 list you would like to see next. I mean, it's been a while since I've had a chance to actually make a new top 10 list for you. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by watching the movie. Hey, you've already done that. Thank you very much. You can leave a comment, leave a like, click that notification bell. It helps a lot. And of course, share this content on your socials. Thank you for the people that are already doing that. And you can also support the channel financially via Patreon. Yes, Timmy Talks has a Patreon account. So if you want to support me and if you want to support the show, kind of sounds like a rap here, you can go to the Patreon page. There's probably a little info card appearing right now. You can click on there and you can check it out. For now, we are going to look at the end scroll at all the patrons that are supporting Timmy Talks.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. Early in the morning, put him in the longboat until he's sober. Put him in the longboat until he's sober. Put him in the longboat until he's sober. Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. She rises early in the morning. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Early in the morning.
Icketus, ficketus, sumba, kazee.